I'm not sure if this is the right place to seek advice, but I truly appreciate some guidance. I met my boyfriend while we were both in relationships. We started as friends, and I knew he was planning to propose to his girlfriend at the time. However, the chemistry between us was undeniable, and we ended up kissing once or twice. He always said he couldn't do that to his girlfriend, that what happened was a mistake. An incredible moment, but still a mistake. I eventually broke up with my boyfriend because I fell hard for him, but I respected his decision to stay with her and tried to move on. Despite this, we stayed friends since we shared a close-knit friend group. I started dating someone else, and he went ahead with the proposal. A year went by, and they got married. But that didn't stop the feelings between us. The chemistry we had never faded, and though I tried to bury my emotions, I knew I still loved him. Shortly after their wedding, we kissed again. I broke up with my boyfriend at the time and told him I was serious about being with him. I told him I didn't believe he should have gotten married, that he wasn't truly happy in his marriage, and that if he were, he wouldn't have strayed emotionally or physically. What followed was the hardest year of my life. He didn't leave his wife, and while we didn't start a full-blown affair, we had an emotional connection that was undeniable. We spent a lot of time together within our friend group, but nothing physical happened beyond a couple of kisses. That summer, he finally came to terms with the fact that he wasn't happy in his marriage. He realized he couldn't keep sacrificing his happiness just to shield his wife from pain. One of our mutual friends had an honest talk with him, asking if he was truly happy and if he could see himself living that way for the rest of his life. He was encouraged to think about his marriage without factoring me in. He needed to decide if staying with his wife was what he really wanted. If so, he'd need to commit to her fully. But if not, he had to make the decision to leave, move forward, and create a chance for real happiness. He chose to leave. His family and friends were incredibly supportive, and he and his wife separated. Their divorce is now in progress, and we've been together for 6 months. He is an incredible partner and an amazing man. We are deeply in love, share the same values and interests, and are incredibly happy together. Now for the advice I need. He's carrying a lot of guilt about the way things unfolded. I know that's normal, and I would be concerned if he didn't feel some guilt. But at times, I can see that it weighs heavily on him. Not constantly, and he's not depressed, but moments do creep up. For instance, we were watching a light-hearted wedding reality show recently, and the wedding scene came on. I could see him get sad and withdrawn. He didn't say much at first, but eventually excused himself for a moment. When he came back, he apologized and explained what he was feeling. We'll be attending weddings together this year, and I don't want to expose him to situations that might feel overwhelming or bring back difficult emotions if he's not ready. How can I handle this? I know his feelings are not about loving me any less, but it does hurt me sometimes. I can't help but feel like I'm not good enough, or that I'll never measure up to the idea of his first marriage. I want to support him and make him feel safe, but on the other hand, I've waited for this relationship for over 2 years. I ended 2 serious relationships for the chance to be with him. It was incredibly hard and emotionally exhausting, but I'd do it all over again because I know he's the one for me. I want to marry him someday, have children together, and build our life. He says he wants the same. Still, I can't fully shake the feeling of being the other woman. I think about how our wedding would be his second, and how he had once hoped to have kids with someone else. It leaves me with mixed emotions, even though I know he loves me. I understand I might get criticism for being the other woman in the beginning, but if you have any advice for moving forward and leaving the past behind, please share. I love this man deeply, and I want us to build a happy, secure future together. One thing I've been learning through all of this is that guilt is a complicated emotion. It's not something that just disappears once you make the right decision or take steps to fix the past. It lingers, especially for someone like him, who has always been so focused on doing the right thing for others. I can see how much he struggles with the idea that his actions hurt his ex-wife, even if the marriage wasn't healthy for either of them. He's told me that he wishes he'd realized all of this sooner, before getting married, before creating such a complicated situation. And while I understand where he's coming from, I find myself torn between wanting to comfort him and feeling a little hurt. It's hard to hear him say he regrets the choices that led to where we are now, because I don't regret any of it. Not the waiting, not the pain, not the uncertainty. I can't regret something that brought us together, even if the path wasn't perfect. I try to remind myself that his guilt doesn't mean he regrets being with me. It's more about the pain he feels for causing hurt to someone else, and honestly, I respect that about him. It shows how big his heart is, even if it means he's carrying around some extra weight. But on tough days, those little doubts creep in. Am I just the consolation prize after a failed first marriage? Will I ever really feel like I'm enough for him? I think part of the problem is that I've also been carrying my own guilt. I try not to dwell on it, but I know I played a role in how everything unfolded. I don't believe it's fair to blame myself entirely. He made his own choices, but I can't pretend I don't feel some responsibility. I question whether I could have done things differently, whether I should have walked away sooner and let him figure things out on his own without me being there in the background. At the same time, I know in my heart that walking away wouldn't have changed how we felt about each other. From the moment we met, there was something undeniable between us. And while I don't condone how everything happened, I also don't believe you can ignore that kind of connection. I've never felt anything like it before, and I doubt I ever will again. So here we are now, trying to navigate this new chapter together. Most of the time, things feel amazing. He's attentive, loving, and genuinely committed to building a future with me. We've talked about getting married someday, about having kids, about the kind of life we want to create, and I truly believe that we're on the same page. But then there are moments, like the wedding scene on TV, where the past sneaks back in. I see the sadness in his eyes, and it reminds me that we're still healing. Not just him, but me too. I'm trying to be patient with the process, to give us both the time and space we need to fully move forward. But it's hard not to feel a little insecure sometimes, especially when I think about how messy the beginning of our story was. I've been wondering if I should bring these feelings up with him. On one hand, I want to be honest and let him know when I'm struggling. I know communication is key in any relationship, and I don't want to let my insecurities fester into something bigger. But on the other hand, I don't want to add to his guilt or make him feel like he's responsible for my emotional baggage. He already has enough on his plate without me piling on. One thing I've been doing is trying to focus on the present and the future instead of dwelling on the past. When those little doubts creep in, I remind myself of how far we've come and how much we've already overcome together. I remind myself that he chose me, not just once but over and over again, and that he continues to choose me every day. I also try to be mindful of how I can support him through his guilt without letting it consume our relationship. When he's feeling down, I encourage him to talk about it, but I also make sure to give him space when he needs it. I don't push him to attend events or situations that might feel triggering, but I also try to gently remind him that it's okay to feel sad sometimes. It doesn't mean he's failing, or that he's not allowed to be happy now. One thing I've noticed is that when we talk openly about his feelings, it actually brings us closer. For example, after the wedding scene on TV, we had a really heartfelt conversation about everything he's been feeling lately. He told me that while he does feel guilt, he's also incredibly grateful for the life we're building together. He said that I've been his anchor through all of this, and that he can't imagine going through it with anyone else by his side. Hearing those words meant so much to me. It reminded me that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, even when things get messy or complicated. And while I know we still have work to do, I'm confident that we can get through it together. If I'm being honest, I'm also learning to let go of some of my own insecurities. I've realized that feeling like the other woman is more about how I see myself than how he sees me. He doesn't treat me like a second choice or a consolation prize. He treats me like the love of his life. And I think it's time I started seeing myself that way too. Moving forward, I want to focus on building our future, not dwelling on the past. I know there will be challenges along the way, but I also know that we're stronger together than we are apart. And at the end of the day, that's what matters most. So if anyone has advice on how to handle these feelings, whether it's about guilt, insecurity, or just navigating the aftermath of a messy situation, I'd love to hear it. I know we're not perfect, but I believe in us, and I'm willing to put in the work to make this relationship everything it can be. After all, he's the love of my life, and I'm determined to build a happy, healthy future with him.